Think about the absolute last time you accidentally touched a scalding hot pan on the stove.
Oh, yeah. The worst.
Right. Or maybe you just spilled a few drops of boiling water on your hand while making tea.
Which happens to me all the time,
Shame
honestly.
here. But think about your exact reaction. Did you scream, jump back, and violently shake your hand?
Yeah, the classic flinch.
Exactly. Or did you just, wince, hold your breath, and quietly walk over to the sink to run it under cold water?
It's such a specific split-second difference.
It really is. And it seems like an entirely meaningless physical reflex, right? Just a random quirk of your nervous system.
Just biology doing its thing.
Yeah, but according to this massive stack of behavioral psychology research and observational data we are diving into today, that split-second reaction just told us more about your workplace leadership style, your relationship boundaries, and your core cognitive wiring than almost any long-form personality test ever could.
It is a profound realization when you start looking at human behavior through this specific lens. I mean, it really changes how you see people.
Oh, totally.
Because we spend an exorbitant amount of cognitive energy walking around in what is essentially a perfectly tailored psychological suit.
A tailored suit. I like that.
Yeah, like we curate our words, we think deeply about how to answer interview questions, we manage our social media avatars.
It's all highly calculated.
Right. We use our highly evolved prefrontal cortex to constantly ask, how should I react to this situation to appear competent and rational?
And in control, which is exhausting, frankly.
Extremely
And
exhausting.
because we spend so much time building and maintaining that curated version of ourselves, we actually start to believe that the suit is who we are.
We really do.
Like you take these elaborate hour-long personality quizzes, or we agonize over our defining traits, trying to pin down our true identity.
The research we're unpacking today for this deep dive argues that the truest version of who you are isn't found in a carefully considered quiz answer.
Right, it's not in the tailored suit at all.
No, not at all. It's in the fraction of a second when a drop of hot water hits your skin, or, when you spill marinara sauce on your shirt.
It's the comfortable, raw, completely unfiltered pajamas you wear when your conscious brain is momentarily knocked offline.
But the foundational premise of our sources today is that you simply cannot fake a flinch.
You really can't. You don't have the time.
Exactly. Everyday moments of slight pain, unexpected discomfort, or just a sudden surprise act as neurological bypasses.
They strip away the social mask.
Because your brain doesn't have the 3 seconds it takes to consult your social conditioning. Your body simply reacts.
It just does what it's wired to do.
And in that split-second, unfiltered physical response, your baseline behavioral traits are laid bare for anyone who knows how to look for them.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive today. We are going to explore your unconscious micro-reactions by analyzing 5 highly specific, incredibly ordinary, everyday scenarios.
5 very relatable moments.
Very relatable. We are going to look at the underlying mechanics of why you react the way you do, and how those physical reflexes perfectly mirror your psychological reflexes.
But before we step into the first scenario, I do want to frame this for anyone listening who might already be feeling a bit of defensive anxiety.
Yeah, that makes sense. It can feel a little exposing.
It can. A common fear when discussing unconscious behavior is that we might uncover something bad or toxic about ourselves.
Like we're going to find out we're secretly terrible people.
Right, exactly. But the literature we are reviewing is explicit on this point. There is no moral hierarchy to these reactions.
Okay, that's good to know.
There are no good or bad reflexes. Whether you jump back from the stove or calmly turn on the tap, neither is a flaw. They're simply mirrors.
They just reflect your unique baseline cognitive wiring.
Precisely. So I invite you to mentally place yourself in these scenarios as we go. Visualize the situation and honestly ask yourself, what would my body do before my brain caught up?
I'll be the first to admit, I've already psychoanalyzed myself with a few of these, and it is eerily accurate.
It's hard not to.
Let's jump right into the deep end with the first scenario, which deals with the most acute, urgent physical sensation possible. A sudden, sharp shock.
This establishes how you operate when there is absolute zero time for executive function to intervene.
The classic, unfiltered threat response.
The purest survival instinct.
So picture this. You are in your kitchen. You're draining a heavy pot of pasta in the sink, and suddenly boiling water splashes directly onto your bare hand.
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
It is a sudden, intense burst of pain. Now, reaction A is what the research calls the immediate retreat.
These are the folks who yank their hand away instantly and often quite violently.
Like full body recoil.
Yes, they might gasp, yelp, or drop whatever they are holding, and they immediately rush to deal with the burn. It's a massive, chaotic, sudden physical retreat.
Okay, so what does that actually mean?
Well, from a purely evolutionary standpoint, this looks like a basic survival reflex driven straight by the amygdala.
The brain's fear and threat center.
Exactly. But the compelling part of our source material is how it connects this rapid, physical reflex to complex emotional and social reflexes.
Okay, I will say.
The data suggests that individuals who exhibit this immediate, violent withdrawal are inherently decisive.
Really? Just from dropping a pot?
Yes, because they possess a highly attuned, innate ability to distance themselves from pain or discomfort the very millisecond it arises.
Oh, I see. So we are mapping a physical heat response directly onto an emotional heat response.
We are. If we look at the psychological mechanics, this physical recoil mirrors a psychological recoil.
So how does that play out in real life, like at work?
In a workplace context or even in a romantic relationship, these are the individuals who can swiftly recognize a hostile environment.
Right, they don't stick around.
Exactly. When a dynamic turns toxic, they don't linger in the emotional pain, hoping it will magically turn into comfort. They feel the burn, they trust their sensory input implicitly, and they execute an exit strategy.
See, my immediate thought when reading that was, wait, are they just overly sensitive?
That's a very common assumption.
Right, but the data actually shows it's a form of profound honesty with themselves.
They don't gaslight themselves into thinking, oh, maybe the water isn't that hot.
Or maybe this terrible boss is just having a bad year.
Exactly. They trust the pain signal. And there is a fascinating paradox the researchers point out here.
Which is?
This bold, immediate action often comes from people who, in their day-to-day lives, might actually seem incredibly modest, quiet, or reserved.
Oh, wow. So the gap between their everyday baseline demeanor and their active threat response is incredibly revealing.
It really is. You might have a colleague who is highly agreeable, perhaps a bit shy, and always seems to go with the flow in meetings.
The person who never rocks the boat.
Exactly. Yeah. But the second a project crosses an ethical line or a manager becomes abusive, they are the very first person to draft a resignation letter and walk out the door.
Leaving everyone else completely stunned.
Because it's a burst of hidden courage. Yanking the hand away from the hot water is a physical manifestation of their ability to honor their own boundaries.
That is amazing. But we can't ignore the double-edged sword here, right? Because a show like ours demands we look at the nuance.
We always have to look at the shadow side.
Right. If you are an immediate retreater, the downside has to be the risk of false positives.
It's a very crucial point. Because their trigger for withdrawal is so highly sensitized, they might interpret the natural growing pains of a challenging project.
Or a difficult phase in a relationship.
Yes, as a toxic burn.
So they might jump ship too early. They feel the friction of a tough conversation with a partner. Their internal alarm bells scream scalding water, and they withdraw emotionally before the situation can even be resolved.
That is the exact shadow side of the trait. Their decisiveness can occasionally bleed into premature abandonment if they don't learn to distinguish between a destructive burn and constructive friction.
That makes total sense. Now let's contrast this with the inverse reaction. Reaction B.
The calm processor.
Yeah. This is the person who feels that exact same splash of boiling water, but they don't jump back violently.
They don't scream at all.
No. They might clench their jaw or wince, but they calmly pivot, put the heavy pot down carefully, walk to the sink, and turn on the cold tap.
The behavioral contrast is striking. The literature describes this as the signature of a logical processor mindset.
So their brain just works differently in a crisis.
Exactly. Their psychological framework is wired to prioritize assessing the broader situation over expressing the immediate shock.
Okay, I have to challenge this because my first instinct reading about the calm processor is that they just have a superhuman pain tolerance.
People always think that.
Or maybe their nervous system is literally just slow. Like the signal takes an extra second to reach the brain.
It is the most common misconception, but the neurological data refutes it entirely.
Really? So they feel it just as much?
Their nociceptors, the sensory receptors for pain, are firing at the exact same rate and intensity as the immediate retreater. They absolutely feel the agony of the boiling water.
So what is happening in the gap between feeling the burning pain and the physical movement? Why aren't they flinching?
The difference lies entirely in cognitive routing and emotional regulation.
Cognitive routing.
Yes, the signal of severe pain reaches the brain. But instead of the amygdala hijacking the motor cortex for an immediate chaotic escape, the signal is routed through the prefrontal cortex.
Which is the area responsible for executive function, planning, and logic.
Exactly. In a fraction of a second, their brain runs a highly complex algorithm. It says, I am in extreme pain. If I drop this heavy pot of boiling pasta water to save my hand, I will splash it all over my legs.
Or the dog standing next to me.
Yes, creating a much larger catastrophe.
Yeah.
So it asks, what is the most efficient way to mitigate my current pain without creating secondary chaos?
That is incredible. They are instinctively managing the crisis. They're calculating collateral damage while their skin is literally burning.
And when you map that onto a professional environment, you see why these people are so highly valued in leadership.
Oh, I bet.
When a massive crisis hits, say a critical server goes down, a major investor pulls their funding, or a PR disaster breaks.
This is the person who quietly starts organizing the cleanup rather than adding emotional noise to the problem.
Exactly. They absorb the shock and immediately begin constructing the solution.
So the immediate retreater saves themselves instantly, while the calm processor ensures the pot of boiling water doesn't get knocked onto the floor.
That is the perfect way to summarize it.
But again, let's look at the downside. Because society and corporate culture tend to idolize the calm processor.
We love a stoic leader.
We do. We love the leader who never sweats. But what is the cost of routing all that acute pain through the prefrontal cortex?
The cost is internal compounding. If you don't process pain outwardly, you risk suffering silently.
Because they look fine on the outside.
Right. The calm processor is so adept at managing the crisis and protecting the environment from their own chaotic reactions that they often fail to signal to their tribe that they are actually hurt.
They don't say ouch, so nobody who knows they need a bandage.
Precisely the danger. In a relationship, this is the partner who absorbed slight after slight, quietly managing their own disappointment so as not to cause a fight.
Until the emotional burden becomes entirely unsustainable.
They swallow the pain to keep the peace, which can lead to profound burnout or resentment.
It's fascinating how a drop of water in the kitchen maps so perfectly to how we handle a crisis at work or in love.
It's all connected.
All right, so we've looked at an acute, sudden danger like heat where survival instincts take over. Let's shift the context. What happens when the stimulus isn't a threat to your life, but it's a lingering, insidious, non-dangerous discomfort?
We move from a study of fear to a study of impulse control.
We are talking about the psychology of a severe itch.
This scenario shifts the behavioral conversation entirely. An itch does not trigger the same immediate amygdala response as a burn.
Because it doesn't represent immediate tissue damage.
Exactly. Instead, an itch is a nagging demand on your attention. It tests your endurance and your relationship with arbitrary social rules.
Okay, you listening right now, here is the scenario. You are sitting in a highly restrictive environment. Let's say a very serious boardroom meeting with executives.
Or maybe you're packed into a quiet movie theater during a tense, silent scene.
Yeah. Suddenly you get a terrible itch. It's a scratchy tag on your shirt collar or a mosquito bite on your ankle. It is demanding your attention. Do you scratch it immediately or do you hold out?
Let's examine reaction A, the instant scratcher.
Okay.
This is the individual who, the very moment the itch registers as an annoyance, immediately and continuously scratches it, regardless of the social setting or the formality of the room.
Now, society has some very strong, generally negative opinions on this.
Very true.
Isn't instantly scratching whenever you feel an itch just a sign of poor discipline? It kind of feels like a toddler grabbing a candy bar, you know? It feels like a lack of restraint, a failure to read the room.
That is the conventional, highly conditioned social judgment. But the source text we're analyzing reframes this entirely.
How so?
And I argue it is one of the most empowering takeaways from this entire body of research. The data suggests that this is not a weakness or a failure of maturity. On the contrary, it demonstrates a powerful, unwavering honesty with one's own comfort.
Honesty with comfort. Let's pull on that thread. How does scratching an ankle in a meeting equate to honesty?
Think about the internal logic required to not scratch.
Okay.
To endure an itch, you have to tell yourself, the optics of me sitting perfectly still are more important than my actual physical well-being in this moment.
Wow, put like that, it sounds crazy.
The instant scratcher rejects that premise entirely. They refuse to suffer needlessly.
They recognize the discomfort and they prioritize their own baseline well-being over arbitrary social rules of endurance.
Yes. Why should they sit there and suffer just to maintain a facade of unnatural stillness for people who likely aren't even paying attention to them?
It's a total rejection of performative suffering. So how does that translate into their broader personality matrix?
It translates into profound interpersonal straightforwardness because this person does not practice the daily habit of suppressing their physical discomfort.
They also lack the neural pathways to effectively suppress their social or emotional discomfort.
Precisely.
Ah, so they're the people who will tell you exactly what they want and exactly what they hate.
Without hesitation.
Hmm?
They do not possess a two-faced nature. You always know where you stand with them because they simply do not have the internal mechanism to suppress their genuine reactions just to appease a crowd.
That must make them great communicators.
It does. If they're in a restaurant and the food is cold, they will politely but immediately send it back.
No passive aggression.
Exactly. If they are unhappy with the strategic direction of a project, they voice it in the meeting. They prioritize authentic comfort and truth over artificial politeness.
Which is incredibly refreshing. To be the instant scratcher is to be beautifully uncomplicated. But again, let's look at the shadow side.
There is always a shadow side.
Right. The downside of being this wonderfully unfiltered, authentic person is that you can create a lot of social friction.
Indeed. If you prioritize your own comfort above all social conventions, you risk being perceived as tactless or disruptive. Total authenticity is a highly abrasive force in a society built on polite fiction.
Right. Telling your boss the project strategy is flawed is great. Telling your partner their new haircut is awful because you value honesty might just be unnecessary cruelty.
Exactly.
There is a fine line between refusing to suffer and refusing to employ a basic social filter. Which brings us to the opposite end of the spectrum. Reaction B. The limit tester.
The individuals who endure the itch.
But the research doesn't just describe them as people who ignore it. It's highly specific.
It is.
These are the people who feel the itch, they acknowledge it, they endure it until the absolute breaking point. They scratch it all at once with incredible, furious intensity, and then they abruptly stop and go back to normal.
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of their self-control. This is not passive suffering. This is the ultimate display of impulse management and timing.
Okay.
The text emphasizes a critical distinction that we must highlight here. Endurance is not the same as giving up.
That distinction changes everything, because when I see someone enduring something awful, I assume they're just a victim of circumstance.
Or that they lack the agency to change it.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a flawed assumption.
Yeah.
The limit tester is actively managing their impulse. They intuitively understand how to build up potential energy and delay gratification for a larger, more satisfying final release.
Oh, I see.
They are calculating the exact moment when the scratching will be most effective and least disruptive.
Okay, to give this a mechanistic analogy, the instant scratcher is like a river flowing freely. If there's extra water, it just flows.
Right.
But the limit tester is building a massive hydroelectric dam. They are intentionally holding back the water, letting the pressure build and build, enduring the strain on the concrete.
Because they know that when they finally open the floodgates, the sheer force of that concentrated water will generate massive power.
Yes.
That is a phenomenal analogy. It is calculated, pressurized restraint.
So let's translate that hydroelectric dam into everyday behavior. This is the person who is uniquely talented at resisting impulse buys.
Oh, absolutely.
They don't just buy a new gadget the day it comes out. They wait, they research, they endure the itch of wanting it, they let the pressure build, and then they execute the purchase on Black Friday when the deal is mathematically perfect.
The strategic patience.
It also explains how they argue.
How do you mean?
The limit tester is the person who doesn't just snap and yell the second someone annoys them in a relationship. They hold back the minor frustrations, they endure the small annoyances, they process them internally. And then, during a dedicated conversation, they articulate their actual comprehensive point perfectly. They know exactly when to open the floodgates for maximum impact.
The instant scratcher provides continuous, low-level, honest feedback. The limit tester provides concentrated, highly impactful action precisely when they decide the time is right.
But the downside of being a hydroelectric dam is that if you miscalculate the structural integrity of your own walls, the dam breaks catastrophically.
The shadow side of the limit tester.
Yeah.
If they hold on to the itch too long, if they delay the gratification or suppress the frustration indefinitely, the eventual release isn't strategic. It's explosive.
In a workplace, this is the person who seems perfectly fine with taking on extra work for a year, never complaining, until one Tuesday they suddenly scream at a manager over a jammed printer and quit on the spot.
Exactly. They built up too much pressure behind the dam.
The lesson there is you can test the limit, but you have to actually know where your limit is before you shatter it.
A very important distinction.
This is such a cool progression. We've looked at a burnt hand, which is localized acute pain. We've looked at an itchy arm, which is a localized lingering irritation. Let's zoom out.
Zooming out.
What happens when the discomfort isn't just on your skin, but it is your entire surrounding reality?
We are moving into environmental adaptation. How you handle a space that simply isn't built for your baseline comfort.
The scenario here is universally relatable, whether you work in a corporate high-rise or you're visiting your parents for the holidays.
Oh, the thermostat battles.
Exactly. You're sitting in a room, and it is noticeably uncomfortably hot. Or it is freezing cold. The ambient temperature is just wrong.
Once again, we observe the immediate, almost unconscious response pattern. Reaction A, the environment modifier.
This is the person who, within 3 minutes of realizing the room is freezing, is already in motion.
They're on it.
They are putting on a sweater, they're asking the host for a blanket, or they're actively hunting the hallways to find the thermostat and aggressively punch the up button.
Or if they are hot, they are stripping layers, opening windows, or dragging a fan across the room.
Right. So, according to the psychological profiles we are reviewing, what does this reveal?
It reveals a highly rational, proactive problem solver. Much like the instant scratcher, they do not view putting up with discomfort as a virtue.
But they take it further.
They do. The environment modifier doesn't just address their own body. They manipulate the surrounding system.
Right.
If there is a problem in their environment, their instinctive neurological response is to expend their energy on changing the environment, rather than forcing themselves to suffer through it.
It is the ultimate pragmatism. I have to marvel at this worldview because it operates on the underlying assumption that unnecessary patience is fundamentally just a waste of time.
Yes.
Like, why sit here and shiver for 2 hours when I can solve the problem in 30 seconds by turning a dial?
It demonstrates a high internal locus of control. They believe they have the agency to shape their surroundings.
So how does that look in an office?
In a business context, this translates to the employee who notices a workflow is inefficient or a software program is outdated and immediately researches and suggests a new platform.
They modify the environment to suit the overarching goal.
Exactly, rather than modifying their own behavior to endure a broken system.
They are the fixers. But the downside of being an environment modifier, the double-edged sword, is that not every environment can be or should be modified.
Exactly the risk. If you are neurologically wired to constantly tweak your surroundings until they are perfectly optimized for your comfort, you can waste a massive amount of energy fighting unchangeable realities.
Because sometimes the thermostat is locked behind a plastic box for a reason.
Or sometimes a corporate policy is rigid because of compliance laws.
Right.
The environment modifier can become deeply frustrated and exhaust themselves and everyone around them trying to fix things that simply require acceptance.
Which perfectly sets up reaction B, the stoic harmonizer.
The endurance specialists.
This is the person who registers that the conference room is freezing. They get goosebumps. They know it's uncomfortable. But they just accept the temperature.
They don't react outwardly.
Right. They don't shiver performatively. They don't complain to the person next to them. They just pull their arms in slightly and keep doing whatever they were doing.
And if you were observing this without understanding the underlying psychology, how might you interpret it?
Well, I would probably think they are either completely oblivious to the cold, like their nerve endings are dead, or they are playing the martyr, like they want someone to notice them suffering so they can get sympathy without having to actually ask for it.
It is a cynical, though common interpretation. But the research assures us it is neither obliviousness nor martyrdom.
Okay, so what is it?
This reaction eliminates a distinct and powerful cognitive prioritization. The stoic harmonizer is prioritizing their internal axis, their focus on their current task, or the social harmony of the group over their own physical comfort.
The internal axis? Meaning they refuse to let the outside world dictate the weather in their inside world.
Precisely. They possess an incredible executive ability to not be swayed by external stimuli. To use your earlier style analogy, it's as if they have built-in noise-canceling headphones, but for temperature and environmental discomfort.
Noise-canceling headphones for the body.
Yes, they recognize the sensory input, the cold, but they actively classify it as background static and tune it out.
Think about the massive cognitive focus required to sit in an uncomfortably hot room and continue proofreading a complex legal document without breaking concentration.
It's immense.
So they're the long game players, the endurance athletes of the intellectual world.
Absolutely. This quiet physical endurance translates to massive psychological tenacity. They possess the ability to maintain deep, unbroken focus on long-term goals without getting derailed by minor external inconveniences. The environment modifier expends their energy fixing the room. The Stoic harmonizer conserves their energy, seals their borders, and funnels it entirely into the task at hand, ignoring the room entirely.
That noise-canceling ability is a superpower in a chaotic world. But as with all of these, there is a shadow side.
Of course.
If you are constantly tuning out the environment and prioritizing the task over your physical state, you are a prime candidate for a spectacular crash.
The risk of the Stoic harmonizer is ignoring structural problems until it is too late.
Yeah.
Because they are so good at enduring, they might stay in a genuinely toxic work culture for years, tuning out the abuse, focusing only on their deliverables, until they suffer a massive stress-induced health crisis.
They don't complain about the cold until they literally have hypothermia.
Exactly. It highlights how both approaches, the modifier and the harmonizer, have immense value, but also distinct blind spots depending on the situation.
Right. Sometimes the broken system needs a loud voice to change it.
And sometimes the work just needs to get done regardless of the terrible conditions.
So true. Okay, up until this point, our deep dive has been focused on how we process negative stimuli.
Burns, itches, freezing reams.
Exactly. We are observing the brain in states of defense or endurance. But the source material takes a fascinating pivot here.
It does, yes.
To truly map the unconscious, we also have to observe how it reacts to positive, chosen stimuli.
We need to see what happens when the brain is actually having fun.
We need to examine how we react when we are emotionally invested in something we actively love.
The passion outlet.
Yes. And the researchers chose the most universally understood scenario for this. Watching a favorite sports team or a beloved athlete in an incredibly high-stakes moment.
A classic scenario.
Imagine it's the final 2 minutes of a championship basketball game. Your team is down by 1 point, and they just stole the ball.
Neurologically, this is fascinating because the stakes feel incredibly high. Your heart rate spikes, adrenaline floods your system.
Even though logically, your prefrontal cortex knows you are just sitting on a couch watching pixels on a screen.
Right. You are in no physical danger, yet your body is preparing for battle.
Mirror neurons are firing like crazy. So let's look at reaction A. The vocal enthusiast.
Oh, we all know this person.
This person cannot stay seated. They are standing up, pacing a trench into the living room rug, yelling instructions at the TV, throwing their hands in the air.
They are visibly, physically, loudly riding every single high and low of the game.
So what does the behavioral data reveal about the deeper personality of the vocal enthusiast?
It points out a fascinating dichotomy that we touched on earlier with the hot water, but inverted.
Oh, how so?
Often, the person screaming at the referee on the television is someone who is incredibly quiet, polite, agreeable, and reserved in their daily conversation.
Really?
Yes. They might be a mild-mannered accountant or a quiet schoolteacher. But put their team's jersey on them, and they turn into an absolute maniac.
Which begs the psychological question, why the sudden, dramatic shift in personality?
The text explains that this phenomenon isn't really about a love for sports mechanics. It is fundamentally about the human need for a healthy, designated outlet for emotional release.
A designated outlet. So they aren't actually losing control of their emotions. They are actively choosing this specific, culturally sanctioned space to let go.
Exactly. It is the modern equivalent of Aristotelian catharsis. It shows a complete lack of internal resistance to expressing joy, anxiety, and frustration, provided the environment is deemed safe.
Wow.
The research suggests this reveals exactly where their true, uninhibited passion lies. More importantly, it acts as a crucial psychological pressure valve.
I love that. A pressure valve.
By screaming at the TV, they're actively venting the accumulated stress, the unsaid words, and the suppressed emotions of their daily reserved life.
It's deeply therapeutic. They're balancing the scales of their nervous system.
Exactly.
If they have to be quiet, accommodating, and perfectly measured at work for 40 hours a week, they literally need those 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon to just explode with raw emotion. It keeps them sane.
It is absolutely essential for their emotional equilibrium. But the downside, the shadow of the vocal enthusiast, is a potential over-reliance on external stimuli to process their feelings.
Right.
If their sports team has an off-season, or if they lack that external designated outlet, do they know how to process their pent-up energy, or does it start leaking out inappropriately in their personal lives?
That's a great point. They need the stadium to feel safe enough to shout. But what about the person who doesn't shout at all? Reaction B, the silent observer.
The contrast here is perhaps the most misunderstood behavior in the entire study.
This is the person who is watching the exact same intense, game-winning moment, but they are sitting completely still. They are staring at the screen, totally silent, eyes unblinking, intensely focused.
If you were sitting next to this person on the couch while you were pacing and yelling, how would you interpret their silence?
I would absolutely assume they just don't care. I'd look over and think, why did I even invite you to watch this? You're completely apathetic. You're probably thinking about what you want for dinner while my heart is pounding out of my chest.
And the research explicitly warns against this exact assumption. It is a fundamental misread of their body language.
Oh, really?
The literature states clearly, you cannot judge a person's internal heat by their external surface reaction.
It flips the script entirely. They aren't apathetic at all.
In many cases, they are experiencing deeper physiological arousal than the vocal enthusiast.
That is wild.
This type of person separates their internal emotional state from their external motor actions. The heat, the passion, the agonizing stress of the game, it is incredibly intense for them.
But you can let it out.
But instead of exploding outward into pacing and yelling, the energy is directed entirely inward into pure, laser-like focus.
So they are feeling everything, but they contain it within the borders of their own mind.
It reveals a profound, what the researchers call, sticky devotion.
Sticky devotion.
It's a deep, anchoring, emotional investment that simply doesn't require a loud, performative display to validate its existence.
Wow.
In fact, for the silent observer, expressing the emotion out loud might feel like a pressure leak. It might diminish the intensity of the internal experience. They want to absorb every millisecond of the moment without the distraction of their own voice.
I love that concept of sticky devotion. It implies a long-lasting, unshakable loyalty.
Yes, exactly.
They aren't fair-weather fans who only cheer when things are exciting. If they are that intensely, quietly focused, they are in it for the long haul.
They really are.
You see this parallel in hobbies too, right? The person who doesn't post a single picture of their art on social media, they don't talk about their process. They just quietly spend 5 hours a day painting in their garage.
That's a perfect parallel.
The devotion is entirely internal and self-sustaining.
Their passion doesn't require an audience, not even an audience of one. However, the shadow side of the silent observer is precisely what you mentioned earlier.
The risk of chronic misunderstanding.
Yes. Because they do not broadcast their emotional states, their partners, friends, and colleagues often misinterpret their profound passion as cold apathy.
Because they look so blank.
They have to work twice as hard to verbally communicate how much they care, because their body language refuses to do it for them.
It's the classic communication breakdown. I love you with all my heart. Why do I need to jump up and down to prove it?
Exactly.
It's fascinating. Okay, we are moving into our fifth and final scenario. We are transitioning from a space of chosen entertainment, the sports game, to an unscripted, highly relatable social accident.
We are looking at how the unconscious brain calculates social value and minor embarrassment.
The scenario is this. You are out at a nice restaurant. You are dressed up. You are having a fantastic flowing conversation with friends or a date. You are eating some incredible pasta and disaster strikes.
Oh, no.
A rogue splash of bright red marinara sauce lands right on the front of your crisp shirt, right in the middle of your chest.
A sudden, glaring disruption of your social aesthetic and personal presentation.
Exactly. Reaction A, the immediate cleaner. This person's brain registers the stain and the entire world stops.
The panic sets in.
The flowing conversation halts mid-sentence. They grab a cloth napkin, they frantically dip it in their ice water glass, and they start vigorously scrubbing the stain.
Their entire cognitive focus shifts instantly from the social connection to mitigating the physical damage to their clothing.
So what does the neurological and behavioral analysis of this reaction say?
It is wonderfully layered. On the surface, it simply reveals a highly meticulous nature, someone who naturally prioritizes cleanliness order, and aesthetic details.
But the research goes much deeper than just labeling them a neat freak or overly vain. That was the part that really surprised me.
How so?
I assumed they were just worried about what everyone else in the restaurant was thinking, like, oh no, everyone thinks I'm a slob who can't eat properly.
That is the external projection, but the core driver is entirely internal.
Right. The source text argues it is actually a manifestation of deep sincerity and honesty with themselves. It's a rigid commitment to maintaining their own internal standard. They chose to dress nicely because they value presenting themselves well. It reflects their self-respect.
Exactly. The stain is a sudden violation of that personal standard, and their brain cannot process anything else until order is restored.
It is an intolerance for systemic errors.
And if we connect this micro reaction to the macro picture of their personality, this commitment to a standard translates directly to how organized and meticulous they are in their broader life.
So it bleeds into everything.
It does. If their brain literally cannot ignore a spot of sauce on their shirt, it is highly likely their brain cannot ignore a typo in a legal contract, a disorganized spreadsheet, or a missed deadline. They maintain a strict standard of excellence across the board.
They are the caretakers of detail. You absolutely want this person managing your taxes or proofreading your book.
That's that one.
But the shadow side here is clear. They can completely miss the forest for the trees.
Indeed. The downside of the immediate cleaner is a vulnerability to minor disruptions derailing major experiences.
Yeah.
In their frantic attempt to scrub a minor stain, they might completely kill the mood of a wonderful dinner. They lose the thread of a profound conversation because they're obsessed with a drop of sauce.
Their meticulousness can occasionally hijack their joy.
Which brings us to our final reaction. Reaction B, the unbothered diner.
The cognitive contrast here is vast.
It really is night and day.
The unbothered diner gets the exact same splash of bright red sauce on their shirt. They look down, register the stain, maybe give a little self-deprecating shrug or a laugh, and then just grab their fork and seamlessly pick up the conversation right where they left off. They just let it go.
What is fascinating here is the rapid cognitive calculation that happens in their brain in that split second.
It's so fast.
This reaction demonstrates immense psychological flexibility and an incredibly sophisticated threat assessment matrix.
Psychological flexibility. Bring that down for me. What is actually happening in their head?
In the instant the sauce hits the shirt, their executive function runs a hyper-fast priority check. It evaluates the damage, a ruined shirt, against the current value state.
Which is a joyful meal, deep connection, great conversation.
Exactly. Their immediate neurological conclusion is the abstract value of the social connection is vastly more important than the temporary material state of the clothing.
Wow.
Furthermore, their logic dictates the shirt is already stained. Ruining the mood of the dinner by making a frantic scene will not magically unstain the fabric.
Ruining the mood won't unstain it. That is such a grounded, bulletproof perspective.
There really is.
And the text points out something brilliant about this trait. This unbothered nature doesn't just affect them. It is highly socially magnetic.
How does their internal flexibility alter the external environment?
By not sweating their own small failures, this person acts as a psychological relaxing agent for everyone around them.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's a form of nervous system co-regulation. Think about it. If you are at a dinner party and the host drops a wine glass and shatters it and they panic and start apologizing profusely, everyone in the room gets tense. The whole vibe dies.
Everyone freezes.
Right. But if they just laugh, say "Opa," and sweep it up casually, everyone else instantly relaxes. The unbothered diner's casual acceptance of their own stained shirt gives everyone else at the table unconscious permission to let their guard down. They make the space safe for imperfection.
That is a phenomenal observation. Their internal flexibility creates a zone of external psychological safety for others.
Yeah.
They implicitly broadcast the social message, we do not need to be perfect here to be worthy of connection and a good time.
The downside, of course, is that if you are too unbothered, your standards might slip entirely. If you laugh off every stain, every late arrival, every missed deadline, you cross the line from flexible to unreliable.
Very real risk.
But in the context of a minor dinner mishap, it's a brilliant trait.
This has been a remarkably comprehensive journey. We have burned our hands to observe our threat responses. We've suffered through itchy restrictions to map our impulse control.
We've frozen in office buildings to understand our environmental tenacity.
We've analyzed how we scream, or don't scream, at televisions to track our passion. And we have ruined our nice shirts to test our psychological flexibility.
If we pull all these threads together, bringing all 5 scenarios into one cohesive picture, What is the ultimate takeaway from this body of research?
The primary overarching takeaway is the complete dismantling of judgment.
Judgment of ourselves, you mean?
Yes, whether you are the immediate scratcher, fiercely honest and demanding of your own comfort, or the silent sports watcher, possessing that deep, sticky internal devotion, none of these are character flaws.
They're just raw data points.
Precisely. They are the intricate, quiet, utterly honest ways your core values and cognitive habits speak when your conscious, tailored-suit brain is distracted. It is the unfiltered language of your subconscious.
But I want to address something speaking directly to you, the listener.
Always important to bring it back to the listener.
Yeah. As we've gone through this deep dive, it's highly likely you identified your own reactions, and as you did, maybe you felt a little pang of dissonance or disappointment.
Like, oh man, I am definitely the person who ignores the freezing room.
Right. But I really want to be the bold person who marches up and fixes the thermostat. Or I always scrub the stain on my shirt frantically, but I wish I could be the cool, unbothered diner.
We all feel that dissonance sometimes.
What happens when the true, raw self we just uncovered in these micro reactions doesn't align with the ideal self you want to be?
The psychological literature actually anticipates this exact feeling of dissonance, and it offers a deeply reassuring perspective.
Oh, good.
Feeling a gap between your instinctual split-second reaction and your ideal self is not a failure of character. It is simply a state of awareness.
So if it's not a failure, what is it?
Having an ideal is simply a compass. The fact that you want to be the person who fixes the thermostat shows that you deeply value proactivity and agency, even if your nervous system's first historical instinct is to hunker down and endure.
I see.
Your ideal shows the direction you want your life to head. Your physical reaction simply shows your current baseline starting point. Recognizing that gap is the first vital step in consciously bridging it. It is not a self-indictment. It is a map for intentional personal growth.
I absolutely love that reframing. The gap isn't a flaw, it's a map. And that really brings us to our final overarching takeaway.
Yes.
Genuine self-understanding is not a static black and white destination. You don't just take an online personality test, get assigned a 4-letter acronym and say, well, that's my identity forever, case closed.
No, human consciousness is infinitely more dynamic than that.
It's an ongoing process of collecting these tiny puzzle pieces every single day. The way you flinch when something falls, the way you delay scratching an itch, the way you react to a spill on your favorite rug.
Every single moment matters.
These microscopic pieces form the actual highly resolute outline of who you really are in practice, not just in theory. You shouldn't deny your unconscious reactions, and you certainly shouldn't judge them. You should embrace them as the most honest, unfiltered feedback you will ever get about your own mind.
It requires a profound shift in perspective, moving from constant self-judgment to curious self-observation.
Exactly. And to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your week, let's circle back to the very beginning. We talked about taking off that curated, tailored suit.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought.
Yeah.
The next time life hands you a microshock, the next time you drop your keys or stub your toe on the coffee table or spill a few drops of hot coffee on the counter.
Don't just clean it up, curse, and move on.
Right. Don't immediately judge your reaction. Just watch yourself. Step outside of your own body for just 2 seconds and act like a scientist observing a stranger.
And ask yourself what?
Ask yourself, why did I just do that? What was the mechanism behind my very first impulse? What was I prioritizing?
Because in that split second, before you have time to put the heavy, tailored suit of your social conditioning back on, you might just be surprised at the stranger or the incredibly honest, brilliant old friend you finally get to meet in those ratty pajamas.